Subscribe to the channel. Do it now.
It's never going to stop making me happy, so it makes me wonder how long we'll have that up there. Look, it's the Monday Overreaction Show here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. This video brought to you by our friends over at rogueshop.com. Go to the website, surf around, play around, look and see what you think might be of interest. Vet it out a little bit. Come ask Anwar and I about it. We will give you all of the reviews that we can for all of the products that we are familiar with. The bottom line is rogueshop.com is Texas's home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. And we like the product, just as simple as that. Mr. Richardson, as I tell everybody to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, notifications, please, all those things. You've got a Monday Overreaction to lead us off with on a Monday Overreaction show. I don't know what it is, but you told me that there is one, and that always excites me.
And you know, and what's up, Barry? And by the way, props to Paxton for being number one, beating Rodolfo. You know what, Catch? This kind of my overreaction almost bleeds into the current promotion that's going on with Orangebloods right now. So it's actually probably unexpectedly one and the same. But allow me to say this, Catch. Please, for the love of God, everybody, stop relying on national writers to give you local information. I cannot believe, Catch. I was in AAU World on Sunday, and when I finally came up for air, I could not believe that Arch Manning was trending. And Arch Manning was trending on Twitter. And you know what the thought or the theme was? I guess it's not a battle with Quinn Ewers after all for the number one position. You think? We've been telling you this all off season long that, hey, it's just going to be a battle for number two, but there's not going to be a battle for number one. But for everybody who relied upon the national people, the national writers, the ESPNs of the world, the Barstools of the world, everyone else listening to the college football talk and listening to that stuff was able to convince themselves that somehow a kid was going to come on who was supposed to be a senior in high school after a couple of months was supposed to be competing against Quinn Ewers. And now they acted surprised like, oh my gosh, you look like a 17-year-old who is still a freshman. This is why I am saying do not rely on national people to give you local information. And that's why it's now would be a good time to sign up for Orangebloods. That's my overreaction.
We do have a free promotion. You can essentially get the entire rest of the offseason for free on us. No charge whatsoever. You sign up for Orangebloods today. Use that promo code OBSPRING. And if you've never had a little taste of Orangebloods, give it a taste. We're willing to put our money where our mouth is, and that's giving you months of a free subscription just to get a taste of what it's like. And then I think we'll keep you once you get that taste. So check that out, OB Spring. It's as simple as that. You get all the way up until the beginning of the season before you have to even think about what it would mean to be a subscriber. Just enjoy the good times. I think my Monday overreaction today, Anwar, is I don't have much of an overreaction. I've gone back, I've rewatched the spring game a couple of times, and I feel like there's a lot there that we knew in advance. And I found myself having the same level of questions about this team. Like everything that I think I knew about the team, I felt like that got reinforced on Saturday. We know that this is a team that's got some really talented kids on the offensive side of the ball. We know that this is a team that is still growing up in some key areas. And I felt like when the spring game was over, surprisingly, there wasn't really that one thing, that one player that I think you show up on Monday with a greater sense of over expectations for what they could do based on what we saw in the scrimmage. I think maybe some people might suggest that that's Maalik Murphy, but I don't know that he completely qualifies. So I'm curious to see where this team goes next, Because I think they're right.
I know where they're going. They're going to Arlington. That's where they're going.
They should.
That's my overreaction. That's my second.
But even that's not an overreaction.
Is it? They've only been like one time since 2009.
Yeah, but they get predicted every year. So it's not that you're completely wrong because you're a whole lot right, but I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting philosophical question. I think the fact that they haven't been there makes it a key, little notch on the belt for you. But I also think the fact that it's not for lack of trying. It's not because people haven't expected Texas to make the jump.
But we haven't, though. And that's the big difference, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I've picked Texas once, when they were coming off of when OU was having its quarterback turnover and Texas got real close and Sam Ehlinger was coming back. I bought into the Texas can get there and get it done. But you're mostly right. I mean, it's not like we're out here on these streets swearing Big 12 championships on an annual basis. It's been the opposite of that.
It's usually been about 8 wins, and we've said slow your roll. And sometimes, just for the sake of preseason predictions, we may up it a win just to make sure we don't hear someone's crap. But I don't know if we really and all maybe that Sam Ehlinger year. We thought, okay, they have all the components of it. But since I've been here, that's probably only been one time in damn near 10 years that we've gone into this off season, came out of spring and said to ourselves, okay, this looks like it. Even with some of the holes that are there, and even with things that you say to yourself there are some deficiencies. I can't think of too many times, Ketchin, you and I have been sitting here in April talking about, only need 1 or 2 things to go right, and this team's probably playing for that, the Big 12 title game. Usually we're telling ourselves, guys, we're not going to pour any Kool-Aid this offseason. That's usually where we're at.
But we've been here too. We have been to this point where we're now on the cusp of thinking it's almost safe to say like really big expectations for this football program. I don't know. I still have this doubt that clings to me. I don't know if it's about Sarkisian. I mean, one of the things that we're talking about this season with Texas football is for a Steve Sarkisian-led team to do something that, it hasn't really done since he's been a head coach. Don't lose 4 games. How about that? And, I don't know. Like, I came away from Saturday and this weekend feeling like, look, you can see that this is a team that's got some talent. But I also came away with some nagging. I didn't think Quinn Ewers looked all that much bad. He didn't look bad. He didn't look great. I thought he was pretty good on the day. Rewatching it, there were a couple times where he doesn't put the ball exactly where you want to. There's a couple of times where he makes throwing the football look so easy, it's almost scary. I'm kind of in the same place I was with Quinn Ewers that I would have been before the spring game. I still have little nagging questions about this team, but I don't disagree with you. They should be playing for the Big 12. They should be in Arlington. And I think, I think now there should rightfully be some pressure on Sarkisian for the program to really start performing well. Like he's received more in 2 years of like grace than any other head coach that I can remember. Tom Herman wasn't getting this. Charlie Strong wasn't getting this. Mac Brown wasn't getting this. Texas fans have been pretty patient through a pretty slow-ish start. And I want to see what this team is capable of. I would love to be really wrong, and that when the season takes off on in September onward that we just see a really explosive, dangerous football team that's ready from the go to be a really good football team. I'd love to see that. I'm just not – I have doubt that we're there.
So, yeah, I think you and I, which is always cool, that we're on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Because here's why I'm a little bit on the other side of it, right, Catch? And it's because I look at it, and this is not a you thing, but it's a Texas fan thing, where I feel like there's this belief that your team has to be 100% stacked in every single department, in every single area. Got to have the best running backs, quarterbacks, offensive line, best receivers, tight ends, defensive line. And it ends up being this can that Texas's fans have been able to kind of kick down the road for a long period of time, which is just need a couple more 5 stars, just need a couple of more elite players that are in here, just need a couple of more things in that. And I think, Catch, what TCU showed us last year is that you don't need a team that's 100% complete in every single area in order to find success. TCU had one of the worst defenses in the country last year. They were in the hundreds by the time they faced Texas, but was still able to find a way to get to the CFP. Now, I'm not putting CFP on Texas. Like that's so many things have to happen for fall in place for that to happen. But Catch, for me, when I look at this team, to me, it's like, do I have enough for the trip? Right? That I don't have everything that I need, but do I have enough to make this trip? And I look at it and I say to myself, they have enough to make the trip. You have an offensive line, you've got a returning quarterback, you've got playmakers at receivers, you got one of the better tight ends in the country, you've got a good defensive line. We'll see if they're emerge into great. Got a little bit of some questions, on the linebacker position once you get past the Jalen Fords of the world. Surprisingly, coming out the spring game, a little bit more questions marks probably about the secondary than I expected kind of going into that game. But at the end of the day, Catch, I look at it and say they have enough for the journey. And so could they use a couple more? Sure, that's great. That'll be great to add in every single piece of luxury and tell yourself, we got a roster like Alabama. I don't think you need Alabama's roster to be successful in the Big 12. That's why I say to myself, I come out of it and say, I feel pretty good about their chances.
I'm not quite as confident with regards to, do they have enough pieces now to make the trip? Maybe they do. I think that, I don't know if right here on a Monday, 2 days after the spring break, we want to just start nitpicking the roster to a certain extent. I actually, and I wrote about this in my 10 thoughts from the weekend. I'm curious to see what happens in this portal window, because I think you can make a case that this team is just a couple of pieces away from being a team that has all the pieces to make a trip. I don't know that they're there yet, but I also know this is essentially a stage of free agency in college football. And Sarkisian doesn't have to go out and go shopping, but he seems to have a little bit of a taste for it. We know that, they've had a defensive tackle in from Minnesota just this week. That's not their biggest need area. Could they be better? Sure. That he's already looking at areas where can they get better, I think is good for potentially this team. I just came away. I really like the skill talent at wide receiver and tight end. And then I have questions kind of about everything else. And I don't know that I need to see a few more absolute difference makers on the defensive side of the ball. I'm more lukewarm on a few areas where I think you're slightly hot. The interior of the defensive line, for instance. I'm perfectly okay with the likes of Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. I think you think those guys are going to be much better than okay or pretty good. But, I wonder where the great players truly are the one thing that you would say about TCU is even when they weren't great on defense, they had a couple of great players. They had a Jim Thorpe Award winner back there in Tomlinson to make difference-making plays. It's the one, I think we're still waiting on that from the defense. Is Jalen Ford a guy that is who he is now, or does he regress back to the mean just a little bit in that maybe he doesn't have a bazillion interceptions this year? Maybe he does. Like maybe that's exactly who he is now. I just have some question marks. The thing that excites you the most and gives reason for why this team might truly be ready to take off is if they really get some momentum going with their skilled athletes, what they've got at wide receiver, what they bring to the table with Jatavion Sanders. I think they can be really good. I thought the running game was just okay on Saturday. I wanted somebody to have that big performance on War in the run game, and it didn't quite happen. Nobody was awful. I mean, I don't show up today down on anybody, but I didn't see anybody that made me think they're definitely starting above Jonathan Brooks. In fact, I came away from the spring game wanting to see more of Jonathan Brooks, in part because I wasn't blown away by the rest of the guys. But there's no question that it's a really talented team. And man, if Quinn Ewers is good, I think this team probably wins the Big 12. They might win it with 2 losses, but I think they may be a flawed but still best team in this conference if the quarterback play really takes a step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one of the benefits, for that, for especially from a Quinn standpoint, is you didn't really see turnovers, from him or anything to that effect. So, if you're looking for like bright spots, right, you didn't see that, and so that speaks to, ball placement, accuracy, things to that effect. I know we'll have a Quinn conversation. I thought Jaden Blue had a good run. And one of the, the better runs that are out there. I know you can't build it up off of just one particular run because, outside of that spectacular run, the running backs were pretty quiet throughout the day. So it was a flash, but it wasn't necessarily like a, splash where you looked at it and said, oh my God, how do you keep these guys off the field? But, I thought Jaden Blue played particularly well. I know everyone keeps talking about, what is his, Kai Woods, is that his name? And his performance. That was early on in the chat. And I mean, I'm happy for him. I know you guys keep asking about Kai. I don't expect to see much of Kai in the season, but I'm happy for him right now. And
you're having a hard time getting Savion Red touches. Do you guys want to get Kai Woods touches?
I'm like, it was good. Like, he was really good, productive. Like, I like it, but I'm just not quite sure that's going to translate a little bit. But, Ketch, I do think, though, what would be interesting for me, Ketch, if you've got A.D. Mitchell, if you've got Xavier Worthy, if you've got, of course, Jatavion Sanders, as you're talking about, you have Jordan Whittington, then you have Isaiah Nayor throwing in a Jonte Cook, and, of course, DeAndre Moore. Sark's got the firepower that he wants on the offensive side of the ball. He's got the quarterback that he wants, and he's got the firepower that he wants, and he's got an offensive line that he feels really good about. And so that at that point, it's just going to be up to, I think for me, it'll be up to the defense to kind of hold their part and hold their own as far as that is concerned, because I don't think it's going to be Xavier Worthy or bust as far as the passing game is concerned this season. They've got a lot of different dudes who they can get the ball to. For me, the only thing is going to be, can the defense hold up, especially because if this ends up being a kind of a quick strike kind of offense, and Sark achieves his goal, which Sark doesn't want methodical 15, 16, 17 play drives. Like he wants to get in and out. So if that's what's happening then, and the defense is playing a lot of minutes, that will be, to me, the key, for the season.
I mean, one of my keys is Sark. They've got pieces. How are those pieces used in the fourth quarter? How are those pieces used in close games? How are those pieces used? they should have more talent than the teams that they'll play against. Now I need to see Sark kind of elevate his game and his role in what this team does on game day. We know that he comes out with scripted beginnings in the first half, and often they look fantastic. This team often plays its best football early in games. What he has the pieces to do to try what he did in Stillwater a year ago, which is get a lead, and then the best way to keep your lead is to have your passing attack bombs away. And that ended up not working. And then they changed their strategy against Baylor a little bit later on in the season, where they get into the fourth quarter and then they just run the ball on every play. Sark a year ago was still trying to figure out what he wanted the offense to be, what he wanted it to look like. I think he wanted it to be a little bit like he wanted it to look like in Stillwater. He didn't have the pieces that night to do that. This year they should. And so, what does it, how does this team finish off games is one of the things I'm really interested in. I'm not completely sold on the running game, but I'm sold on the pieces that Quinn Ewers has to throw the ball to. And so just how aggressive this team ends up being on offense, I think, is one of the things that will determine just what kind of season we're looking at here, Anwar. But you would think that Sarkisian would be pretty tempted to just let it all hang out with, I've got better skill guys than the teams I'm playing against. That should be enough for me to win games. You'd think that would be part of what would be running through the mind of Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, I mean, he's an offensive guy. He is a former quarterback, so those guys, those people tend to lean on those things, right? Charlie tended to think about, when he was here, the offense to take care of itself. I'm just going to make sure our defense is legit, right? And though that seems to be, and to a certain degree, Tom was like that as well. I mean, Tom was, a passer of the football. And you got to think to yourself that you're probably going to have a little bit of that with Sarkisian, which, look, Sark has been determined, and we saw it last season. He's determined to just throw bombs. Like, he's determined to have big plays. Like, even when it couldn't happen, and everyone was saying, for the love of God, stop calling those plays. Like, please, it's not even close at this moment. He still kept doing it. We know that Sark is so determined, Catch, to have big plays that he reveals to us that Xavier Worthy was playing with a broken hand, and he was still throwing the ball to him. Like, so to me, Catch, I don't think he'll do it less now that he's got more weapons. I mean, it could be the opposite at this point, where he's going to say, I might do it more because I've got more guys that I can throw it to. So we know that that's exactly what he wants. And if Saturday was any indicator of that, I think you had a little bit of a preview of what your offense is going to look like, which is Sark is going to throw it. He's going to throw it deep. He's going to hope for the big plays. And he'll manage the run game as best as he can. But he wants to make sure that passing game is clicking. Whatever the line is, Catch, on attempts for Quinn Ewers, whether it's in the game or this season, I would take the over. Whatever that line is, I will routinely take the over, and I guarantee you'll win more than you lose.
The other component of that is just how ready is Quinn Ewers for that type of responsibility. I'm sure he would be excited by the notion of, we're just going to let it go in the passing game, and all of these weapons, we're constantly going to be taking advantage of mismatches and guys that we think we can put on other, Texas should be able to have some matchups where they've got a really good player against another team's sketchy player. Mm-hmm. Got to be able to take advantage of that, instead of a year ago, everything just ran through the Worthy Express. And when it wasn't going, when there were roadblocks in that expressway, they just kept doing it anyway. But you would expect the diversity to be there. This felt like a fairly wide open passing game, and we didn't even see them really use Jatavion Sanders on Saturday. There's no real reason to, but he's there in that hip pocket, second, third best tight end in the country. That's not an insignificant thing. A.D. Mitchell looks like it. There were various moments on Saturday where you're watching the game and you could go close your eyes and imagine that the uniform was red instead of burnt orange and go, I can see why Georgia fans thought he would be a starter for them and somebody that they would lean on. You can see that Texas has added more pieces. I think they could still be a piece or two away. But a piece or two away from what is the thing I'm not completely sure about, because I think you're right. They might have enough as is to go get a Big 12 championship in their current form. If they can stay healthy, I think they've got a really good chance. If this team is tested depth-wise in some areas where I don't know that they're just overwhelmingly floating in high-end talent, maybe then it's just a shootout every week. Maybe it's a race, and it's hard to know how those things will completely go. All I know is that the portal season is opening, and if Texas wants to be aggressive, there's a world out there where they can go out and add a few more pieces through the portal, through flat out aggressiveness of we're just going for it. And I think that depending on how they might address this team, it might be just what the doctor ordered in order for me to get to September and go, you know what? Yes, this team is the best team in the Big 12. I still have a hard time emphatically saying that, but I don't think they're that far away. And I think that a guy like Robert Griffin was watching the game through his own eyeballs, his own prisms on Saturday as a Baylor guy. And I think as a Baylor / national / he watches everything college football guy, I think he could see this team has some dudes. And, it's a matter of having enough of those guys all be dudes at the same time that will determine just how good this team is. But they can do it. It's not an issue of can, Anwar, which is so often the real conversation that we have about this Texas team. It's a will they conversation. Sure. And if you say yes, you're giving them some benefit of the doubt that I don't think has completely been earned yet. If you're saying no, you're probably somewhat jaded by the fact that you've given them some benefit of the doubt through the first 2 seasons so far, and it hasn't completely been justifiably earned in return. So I'm just stuck between two different things, but I understand exactly where both sides are coming from. You don't have to twist my arm to make me think that this Texas team will be the best in the Big 12. It's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah, because I think, Catch, at the end of the day, what we start thinking about is, and again, we'll get more into the offseason and do a kind of a deep dig, but every team in the Big 12 is probably going to have some sort of question mark, and the teams that matter the most are going to have their set of question marks. We know that, Kansas State is losing, Deuce, right? And I mean, they've had him because Deuce has graduated, right? Or he's done going into the draft, or does he come back for one more year?
Who's that?
Deuce Vaughn.
Deuce is gone.
So Deuce is done. What is Kansas State that's been able to have that guy for a number of years? Like, who becomes, people start talking about replacing Bijan. Well, Texas has some guys that replace Bijan. Deuce Vaughn was kind of like just an anomaly, Catch. Like, to see a guy that comes in and is able to have that kind of instant success at his height and all that, like, to think that Kansas State is just can instantly replace that. There's nothing on Kansas State's resume that says that's going to happen, right? TCU loses a lot of components, right? And what does that look like for TCU? I don't know what Oklahoma State even looks like nowadays. Like, I felt like everyone went in the transfer portal after the season, so I'd have to check in to see what they've been able to kind of replenish and put in there. Baylor had some question marks. Like we could go down the list of guys that we'll say to ourselves, like, those programs have some question marks too. And so now to me, like I'm saying, like, which of what's left? And Texas should have more. We'll have more talent on paper than any of the teams that they face, which has always been the thing, right? But it comes down to coaching.
Are you convinced with Quinn?
Yeah,
I'm not.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think we're not on opposite ends of the spectrum on that. And to be fair, I was convinced about Quinn last year, so I probably won't change my tune too much on that. But there's a couple of things that I gotta factor in. I gotta factor in youth. I've also got to factor in the Xavier Worthy thing was odd just for so many different reasons, and then we find out there's a hand injury that's associated with that as well. And I just think there was some growing pains that went into it. But when I hear you hear Quinn talk about, even after the game, like his diet, changing how he eats, his regimens, like the workouts and all these kind of things, you hear a guy that seemingly gets it, that seemingly understands, oh, okay, I get this college football thing now. I took it for granted just a little bit, but you know what? I'm serious. He's a guy that, Catch, he's being talked about, when like the Aaron Rodgers conversation, right? As far as what does Green Bay do with Aaron Rodgers? And one of the scenarios I heard is that they said, you know what? The next draft class is so draft heavy with good quarterbacks. Like Green Bay, for instance, may say to themselves, you know what? We'll just hold on and deal with Aaron for one more year, because then we can just deal with him next year, because they got a guy like Quinn Ewers who could come out, that could be the answer for that. And I think Quinn has even verbalized that he didn't say that, but he's talked about after the game about there's certain things that he's trying to get to, goals he's trying to achieve, which, by the way, months ago, Catch, at the beginning of the offseason, I reported that his goal is to become a guy that emerges into one of the top draft prospects in next year's class. And then by that, as a byproduct, Texas has success. So, yeah, that's what, for me, I believe that the light bulb has gone off. And that's why I think we've heard about a different Quinn. And that's why, for the most part, I think he was pretty good on Saturday.
I think for the most part, it was pretty good on Saturday. I'm just not yet convinced. And that's okay. Like, if I'm the last guy who comes around, because I just want to see it established a little bit more on the field. I want to see just a little nitpicks that I would have on Saturday that I don't necessarily even want to get into on the show. Like, I'm not trying to get into nitpicking. I'm just stating for the record, I'm not quite there yet. I think I can see some improvement. Like you said, it's not a tiny thing that he's not turning the ball over. That really is one of the very first big steps you want to take as a young quarterback. He wasn't a turnover machine a year ago. Even at his worst, it wasn't, oh my God, he can't just stop turning the ball over. I mean, he wasn't really that kind of a player. So I think that gives you hope that his floor is always going to be pretty good. I don't know that he's got his hand on the light switch yet on his ceiling. So I don't know what all that means. But I think that more times than not, my expectations for Quinn at this point will be that he'll be pretty good this season. How will he perform in the toughest games of the season? I'm not quite sure of. I'm curious to see how defenses Anwar defend this Texas team, because a year ago we saw some teams that said we are going to do everything we can to bottle up the run, and if Quinn Ewers and this passing game can go over the top and just beat us, so be it. I think that looks a little different this year. The teams should be careful in daring Quinn in this passing game to light it up, because they may very well do that. So curious to see how it looks. I guess I'm a little surprised that I didn't come away from the spring game a little more emphatic about something. Instead, I felt really like the things I had already been thinking were being reinforced. And there weren't a lot of areas where I thought, okay, totally didn't expect to see that.
What about Anthony Hill's performance? I mean, was there? I mean, that's a guy that up until this past last week was kind of quiet. And look, you and I had the David Bender conversation, and you remember, and I think it was even last week. I think I want to ask you, I was like, isn't Bender just kind of a placeholder for Anthony Hill? And you're like, yeah, probably. But what about that kind of steam kind of closing out strong?
I think it's great for Anthony Hill. I'm not surprised. Couple of things. Sark, towards the end of camp, mentioned Anthony Hill a couple of times. He mentioned him in the same breath as Byron Murphy as pass rushers that he really liked at one point. And that kind of caught our eye because he had mostly been working with the 2s and the 3s, but was being talked about in the same breath as this guy gets to the quarterback and is disruptive a lot. And then there was a little more talk in the Thursday practice. And then, so he ends camp, like you said, gaining speed. I think he's a real option for Texas as a potential pass rusher. You know, how the coaches use a guy that they think is otherwise maybe a little limited. I mean, I don't know that he's doing everything at the position that they want him to do, but he's got a knack for playmaking when used in this one specific fashion. There are a lot worse things that a guy can be than really good situationally getting to the quarterback. Like, that sounds lovely, Anwar. I don't know about you, but I know that there are NFL teams that love, there are just worse things than a guy can be than, every time you put him on the field in games, all he does is go get the quarterback. And there's a worse lot in life to have. I think that was a positive development. I don't know what to expect from that. I know what could be hoped from Anthony Hill in year one. I have hopes that he even gets to be an even more well-rounded linebacker so that they can use him in more situations than just pass rushing downs and things like that. So I have high hopes for him. What to expect? I don't know. This is a team on defense. It's hard to know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I was just, talking about just a little bit. Because I know you said little things. You're talking about basically like surprises or things to that effect. And some of it is a byproduct, honestly. This is, the things that we've kind of reported going into the game. So, that's, if something caught you totally off guard, then that would have mean we missed something in the reporting leading up to that game. And maybe that's why you're kind of like, okay, this kind of played out for the most part, how I thought it was going to play out and what I expected for it to play out. But Hill was, for the most part, it was a surprise. And some of those guys were just good to see live and be able to do it because of, what we've heard behind the scenes versus being able to see it live. I thought was a little bit different. We'll have to do deeper digs into like offensive line and, watch that a little bit more closely. But Hill was pretty good. LaFau was a little bit Leona LaFau was a little bit of a surprise for me. And I hadn't really heard his name that much in spring. And I felt like I saw him out there catch, at different times. I'm not saying it was the, damn it, I'm here moment. And probably another thing, which is the easiest one, is probably the Maalik Murphy performance, which we haven't really talked about today, but that would be another one that if I had to say to myself, not quite sure I would have saw that one coming. The Maalik Murphy performance would be one I would say to myself, I didn't see that coming.
But see, I kind of disagree in that if you tell me before this spring that either of those two guys could have a good practice, I'd go, yeah, no, they're both capable. They're both uber talented enough that coming out of any practice, any singular practice, one could have its virtues being sung coming out of those practices. I think that's what Maalik Murphy had on Saturday. That's what it looks like when his talent gets pointed in the right direction and he is able to consistently make plays. It doesn't look like that every day. When it starts to look that good every day, I think Texas has quite the player on its hands. I mean, he has a ton of upside. Is that how I would have bet that things would have turned out? I don't know. I've thought about this a little bit. Maybe, like if you had to say what is the best scenario that Texas could have had before the game, I would say, if Maalik played a little bit better than Arch, it would help stave off some of the conversations. I mean, you know what the headline on ESPN.com was today?
What?
Manning receives ovation.
Oh, yeah.
Completes a pass.
Yes. That's on the app. That's on the app right now. The ESPN app. You get on. There's one highlight from the Texas spring game on the ESPN app right now.
Orange receives ovation.
That's it.
The headline is "The people clapped." That was the headline. And it's 2 days later, and that's still the headline. Yes. I'm telling you, I was looking at it earlier, and I froze in my tracks. Let me put it on so I can, if it's still up. It cracks me up, man. Here's what it says.
Okay.
Arch Manning receives ovation, throws first completion in Texas spring game.
I bet you the hits on that story, we knew their numbers were pretty damn high. Clearly, if it's still up, yes. That thing is hitting. That thing, we know that thing is hitting at a high rate. That's why you got to subscribe to local stuff. But
it is a reminder also that if Arch had, I think we're got to be careful we're not poo-pooing, and I know we haven't, Maalik Murphy's performance because he was really good on Saturday. I do think if we did body switches and that had been Arch that had the day that Maalik had, it would have been impossible to slow down the hype train. That
out of control.
It was Maalik that had that performance, and yet there's still a bit of a coronation on Arch for doing absolutely the bare minimum. He completed a pass. That's what he did. That's what he did. And,
look, if Arch had Maalik's day, I wouldn't be on here right now. I'd probably be a guest on Cowherd talking about, the Arch Manning and what's going on in Texas. Like, that's what would have happened.
So, all I know is this: the quarterback position at Texas is fun. Every day, just about anything could happen. And I think we got one of those on Saturday. I thought if you'd never seen those the quarterbacks ever play before, you were an alien and you came down from Earth to watch the Texas spring game, I think you would have come away thinking that Maalik Murphy was the best quarterback on the team. Now, I don't think that's what Saturday meant, but it speaks to the talent in that room that I think all of those guys can look like that on any given day. And I think it's a huge attaboy for Maalik to take with him to be reminded of that legitimately. Like, dude, you did that. You hit that Jonte Cook pass on the very next play after DeAndre Moore dropped a long ball. Like, you were the one throwing the biggest dimes. All of them can feel good about not turning the ball over. And I just think the quarterback room is there's a lot of high-end talent. That's the best way you can say it. And on Saturday, one of those pieces looked really good. It does make me wonder, Anwar, how Maalik is framed now that the season starts. When we get to September, let's say that Quinn is just okay in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. That we get into the third quarter, and it's a 13-10 ball game, and he's not awful, but he's not great. He's just pretty good. was Saturday enough? Because I think for some people it will be that if in a pinch it looks like Quinn doesn't have it, will Maalik Murphy be somebody that the coaches look towards? I don't know that that's a yes. I don't know that Sark's really trying to change the quarterbacks that quickly again. But I think there will be fans who think, based on what happened on Saturday, that Maalik is viable enough to put into a game if you need to shake things up a little bit.
Yeah, I just don't think it'll happen though. Catch.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't see a scenario where that would happen. I think Maalik's best opportunity to see the field, barring an injury, is next year. Quite honest with you, but it just what Maalik did was good for his resume. Probably good for a little pride, a little ego. As a competitor, and you've been overshadowed really since you step foot on campus, and to finally have a moment. You got to think one of the biggest Maalik stories and the biggest Maalik moments of the spring prior to that was Maalik standing by himself during a spring practice during week 1, where it looked like it was a sad photo, and it just looked like, man, this thing ain't going to end well.
It was a sad photo. It made me sad. I saw it and I was like, oh, man, we got to get Maalik standing by himself at practice, helmet in his hand, just looking lonely. So
correct.
I think you're right. I am saying, in a weird, odd, a roundabout way, Quinn has so few skins on the wall that he can say, hey, I've done this. You ain't got to worry about me, because he's got so few. I think Maalik will be elevated in the minds of a lot of Texas fans in terms of how ready he is based off of what happened on Saturday. And I think it'll oddly be a weird pain in the butt for Quinn, should Quinn ever have just an okay performance. I think that the world that we live in with the Texas quarterbacks right now is that they're all guys you'd like to see play. And there's not one of those guys that on the first game of the season I wouldn't like to see get a couple of series. So, it's a unique situation that Texas is in. I almost wish this is what happens when you don't open up practice enough. I almost just wish there was another scrimmage or another practice setting that fans could go out and see Quinn Ewers play again. Just be a little bit reminded of like maybe the differences between all of the quarterbacks right now. And I think there will be fans that come out of that spring game thinking that the difference between Quinn and Maalik is smaller than it probably is. And, and it will stay that way until they've ever been given a reason to think otherwise.
When given an opportunity to talk about Maalik after the game, one of the things that Sark kind of pumped the brakes on it. Like he was like, hey, this is his first spring. Look, he was injured for, the first week or so. Like, he still has some growth and development. Like Sark, when given the opportunity given the opportunity to say like, hey, I've got a quarterback battle that's going on, because we know that Sark is not what did he say? I want to keep guys incentivized to keep fighting and going on in the offseason, right? But then what did he say? He's like, well, I feel comfortable saying Quinn's my starter. So it's clear in his mind, like that was great and that was a great moment. But in Sark's mind, the head coach who's there every day, he's like, no, that was great. Loved it. Great for him. You guys relax. Quinn's my guy. And, we'll let we'll let Maalik and Arch battle it out for the number 2 position. That's what it seems what it is. And catch the thing I've talked to my sources about the plan and hope is, and I know there's 2 different things, right? Because we're talking about what the fans expect, and I'm kind of talking about like the inside of the building kind of stuff. But, the hope was or is that Quinn balls out this year. He goes pro. Next year, Maalik balls out. He goes pro. And then the year after that, it's going to be Arch as the starter, having a redshirt season and then, going past that. That's the thought and the plan. But, if Quinn is just okay against Alabama, like I don't see Sark really being knee-jerk like that. Like that doesn't seem to be kind of someone would say, well, what about Hudson Card and Casey Thompson? But those weren't really Sark's guys for him to be invested in them to that effect. I think he was just like, all right, well, that didn't work. And the film was so bad for Hudson at the time that he felt like a change needed to be made. But I think he's invested in Quinn. That's his dude. And I think he's invested in seeing, Quinn being successful. And, it would take that kind of performance, but I don't know if that's what we would ever see from Quinn. I know I shouldn't say absolutes and nevers because I got burned with that last year, but I'll go back on the horse.
Let's jump into some super chat comments and knock those out. Our guy Barry jumping into the chat just saying, you guys are my only credible source. Appreciate that, Barry. I'll listen to them all. You guys are accurate considering I reconfirm from a good source. Fair enough, Barry. Fair enough. Also in the super chat, Peyton says, even in the spring game, I think Sark's guys look a lot better product on the field than previous coaches. Peyton. First of all, there is still a pretty heavy amount of Herman guys on the field. So, I don't want to be overly critical of Tom Herman on here. Look, you can see a more cohesive, more talented team. There's still, there's still a lot of Herman guys on the field, Anwar. Too many for me to be making Sark guys and Herman guys kind of comments.
Catch, I'm going to say, I'm going to keep it a buck. Hopefully this doesn't have you judge me harshly. If you ask me about what a spring game looked like 3 years ago, I will have no working knowledge of that. So I can't compare this spring versus a spring of, a 2014 spring versus a 2017 spring versus I know what happened today. But if you even ask me like, hey, man, what were the highlights from last year? I'm like, I don't really remember. I remember games. I can't tell you I put mental pins in spring games.
Hayden, I know what you're saying. I know where you're coming from. I have a harder time saying it when, you can count starters and almost half of them are still Herman guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Just JS. You can't say that the guys look like a better product and ignore the fact that some of them are still Herman players.
I know you do a super chat, but Taylor actually said something really cool in the chat. He is correct. Kai Money was the leading receiver in the spring game 3 years ago.
Well, then there's that. Tom G saying in the super chat, great seeing you guys, both of us at the OB happy hour. Good to see you, Tom. Offense should be sick this year if Quinn Ewers is on point. How many points a game does our D have to hold opponents to in order to win the Big 12? Now I actually thought about that earlier today on War without Tom asking the question. It is a good question.
It's a very good one.
I think this offense is going to average about 40 points a game.
Okay.
Ish. Which is what we thought a year ago, and it didn't quite happen. How many? I mean, I think if this defense holds teams to 30 points a game, they're going to win a lot of their games because they're going to score 40. I think that this is going to be the most prolific offense that Sark's had since he's been at Texas. I think. 25, I think, would definitely get it done. 30 gives you a chance.
Yeah. I would, and again, I'd like to do a deep dig. It's a really good question, Tom. Like that is a fascinating, but I would 25, and this is the 25 is a no-brainer for me at that point because I think Texas has enough firepower where that shouldn't. I don't expect them to, like you catch. I'm not expecting a lot of low-scoring games. Like I'm expecting the games that start at night catch. I expect us to be doing shows at 1 a.m. because I expect it to keep going. But it's a great question.
Football Junkie says over and under sacks for Hill. I'd probably set it 4.5 on War.
Yeah, as a freshman. Yeah, I mean, because what did Jalen Ford finish with last season? What did DeMar out like? I'd have to go back to see what their numbers are to kind of get a gauge from that room. But I would definitely probably say 4.5 would be a good one. I think that'd be great for a freshman, quite honest with you.
It really would be, which is why if you go much higher, it sounds too high. I'm with you. 4.5, yeah. I'd probably straddle that for all the rest of the offseason, trying to figure out the best side of that. 4.5 is actually a good number, though, for him. Really another super chat comment. His overreaction. Maalik Murphy, QB1. I told you on one. There are people who saw what they saw on Saturday, and the whole quarterback conversation looks different to them today than it did 48 hours ago. There's no way to control that.
I think the only thing you could say, and I hear you, Chris, and I've seen other guys in the chat talking about it. You got to think to yourself, this is probably what stacked quarterback rooms look like. And sometimes you're just going to have guys who are really good. Like Texas has had to play kind of like they've had one starter and then they just haven't had anyone else for years, right? Catch. It's just been, well, we just got to throw someone out there and outside of Sam, right? But this is a little bit different. This is where it's like, man, you got a bunch of good guys. And sometimes those guys are going to have to wait their turn. And this is kind of, you might be in the Ohio States of the world where you say to yourself, like, man, Joe Burrow would love to play you, but we've just got some guys in front of you. And you're just going to have to wait your time or, hope you don't want them to go elsewhere. But I think this is what a stacked quarterback room looks like.
My conspiracy theorist brain noticed that Maalik Murphy got to play with better receivers on Saturday than Arch did. And I'm not saying that it was like some, JFK level conspiracy to make Maalik have the better day. I'm just saying it was hard not to notice that when Arch was throwing the football, it wasn't to Jonte Cook. Like, wait, who is that? I wrote it down. Like, who caught Arch's first pass? And it was like, I don't know who that guy is. Thatcher caught the ball.
Put some respect on Thatcher Milton's name.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, who's Thatcher Milton again?
All I'm saying to make my point is that Thatcher Milton caught the first pass on Saturday.
Out of Cyprus, man. Cy-Fair.
I am not. Hey, he may be the next big thing on the scout team. All I'm saying is, I would like to have seen him a little bit more with a Jonte Cook at his disposal. I think those types of players matter. Maalik Murphy, let's slow down on the QB1 train just a little bit, just a smidge. But it wouldn't be wouldn't shock me if this thing becomes a thing over time. The SEC says, please look at the play that Anthony Hill blows up that lineman. He will be him. And Quinn is our guy. Let's roll. Hook him. All right, SEC.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't have anything to say back to that other than let's go.
Yeah, I'm good with that. It's a statement, and I've got nothing more to add to it. I think he will be that guy.
Let's wrap things up with some parting shots. You got anything? Any final goodbye thoughts from Saturday?
Yeah, I look forward to being able, like I said, I was in AAU world yesterday, And so I didn't get a chance to really dive into, those things. By the way, Mike Harge, his son was out there playing as well. And apparently in the championship game of their game, it got called because a fight broke out at the Pack up in Leander. Just players, parents, coach, everyone going at each other. So it's funny when you had that tweet last week about the kid hitting the ball, and I was like, I've seen worse. Like, I'm like, I've seen literally just blows. I've seen coaches swinging on players, parents. Like, I've seen it all. So, but in any case, I look forward. But my main point is I look forward to getting into just watching the film over and over again and being able to kind of, jump into it. The guys will have, Sarkisian said the guys will kind of go through like this last week of conditioning, kind of, seeing where they're at body wise, and then have some time off for, some studying, and then, basically come back after Memorial Day. But looking forward to really just diving into, all those things. Us had to kind of slow down for a little bit, Catch. I mean, we've kind of been going at a rapid pace. So for us to kind of be able to pump the brakes just a ton, see the family for a little bit, and then before we get started, to which I anticipate is going to be a really good year for Texas.
Yeah. Let's buckle up. It's a good reminder. Put that promo code up there, Blake. Let everybody know. Free, a free trial all the way into summer camp. Basically, our way of saying, give us a look now. We'll win you over when you least expect us. With our reporting when nothing is going on, that once things really start picking up, there will be nowhere else you want to go other than to Orangebloods. So check it out. OB promo code OBSpring. You can sign up all the way through the rest of this week, and that promo will take you all the way in to August. It's free. Might as well check it out. It's free. Onward, other than that, rogueshop.com. I may go there as soon as we're off, log off of, this and log on to that and just go shopping a little bit. I'll use that promo code Orangebloods for that 10% discount. Other than one last shout out to Rogue, I really don't have anything in the way of a parting shot Onward, other than we'll have the modcast tomorrow. So we'll continue more spring. I haven't heard a whole lot from Alex yet, so I'm curious to hear both in the modcast and over at Orangebloods kind of what his takeaways were from some of the little position tweaks that we saw. What did he think of Anthony Hill? What did he think of NATO running with first-team guards while, pieces were moved around at the backup center spot? A lot of little things happening on Saturday worthy of conversation. We'll continue that all week long here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. Give us a like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Until next time,